Hey there. It's been a busy and productive day, and while I've been getting everything else done, my mind keeps drifting back to this kilt which has been sent to me for alteration. This gentleman had contacted me by email. We'd had a bit of back and forth about how his kilt was disappointing him. It's too long, it's too big. His waist is 34. This waist is 42. And could I help? So of course I agree. Having seen pictures of him in it, because there are some times where the alteration is going to be so profound and the figure is going to be rather tricky to tailor for. There are some cases that I have to say, no, you simply must come to the shop. But that isn't one of these cases. So he sent me the thing. And again, in addition to the measurements, I also ask for photos. And if people come to the shop, I take the photos of the person from front, rear, left and right side, so that in addition to the measurement, I also can see how they carry themselves, their posture, their physique and such like that. Also, he sent me pictures of him wearing the kilt, and I could see plainly it's a bit too long. He's quite tall. He's got another kilt which is 24 inches from top to bottom, which he feels is too short for him. I have a solution for that for him, which we'll talk about later. But this one, he says he thinks it's all right because it's the whole top of the knee, middle of the knee debate. But he says occasionally when he's wearing it and the kilt is wet, the backs of his calves are raw from the pleats rubbing. And that immediately tells me it's a little too long. I know, ow, right? But that's a quick fix. This one is 26.5 inches long, which is very long for a kilt, even for someone as tall as him. The immediate reply is just by lowering the buckles, because they're very close to the top. Lowering the buckles maybe an inch, inch and a half, which the net effect is it'll bring the kilt up relative to the natural waist. But I've started looking at the kilt, and it's an interesting blend of wonderful workmanship and what were you thinking? So it's a slightly unusual case to add to the what I'm starting to call the Sauzy or Chronicles. So what we have initially is, I don't know what tartan this is, but it's beautiful cloth. It's got a proper selvage. The pleats are beautifully laid out. They're wonderfully sewn. The workmanship is quite remarkable. But that's where my praise is going to kind of peter out and stop, because when we count the pleats, we have 33 pleats, which, okay, one more thing. More pleats is better than fewer pleats, mostly because I see kilts made with fewer pleats these days, and it's a cost-cutting measure. The older kilts tended to have more pleats, particularly the military ones. So there may be just a little bias on my part. But in this case, we have 33 pleats, which is remarkable. 31 is the top for military. This is a civilian kilt. But then when I count them, I find that we have more pleats on one side than the other. We have 33 pleats, and counting from the outside, that means that this pleat where I've put the chalk X's here is the middle, and that's a red flag, because when you're wearing the kilt, even in a kilt pleated to the stripe, it's vital that this center element be centered on your back. And if this is if he's wearing this so that the front element is centered, this is going to look off a little bit off, and it's going to catch the eye, not in a good way. So we need to restore that back to the center line. Now, again, we have 2 extra pleats on this side, these 2 here. Because we see, I mean, it's, again, beautiful workmanship, moving, book matching out from the middle. Everything matches until this pleat, same element, and then we have 2 more pleats here. So what I want to do, it's just not enough to repair the little bit of work and reduce the size of the aprons and lower the buckles to make this fit, because it's still going to be kind of meh. Right, what I want to do is right off, I want to rob those 2 pleats on that side. So we're going to reduce it to 31 pleats, which will restore, or rather place, that white element to the center of the back, which as it should be. Now, looking at the front apron, we have this blousing here, which I could possibly knock down by shrinking with an iron, but shrinking doesn't last forever, especially when the cloth isn't going to be under tension. It's probably going to blouse out again. I believe that's the result of this very vigorous A-line here. I'm not sure, but I don't like it. Yeah, it troubles me a little bit. So what I want to do, of course, when we're reducing, this is 42, I want to reduce it to 34. I want to shorten it a bit. Again, I only want to, we could shorten it by an inch to 25, but I think I would rather just lower the buckles, which will raise the kilt, and thus by not removing the material along the top. If this adjustment isn't perfect, we haven't painted ourselves into a corner by already removing cloth. The cloth will stay, the buckles will come down. Again, remove 2 pleats on one side to restore that to the middle, but if I leave these 31 pleats, the apron isn't going to be quite big enough. Again, it's going to be at or about the horns of the pelvis, which is rather more skirt-like than kilt-like. So best practice, I believe, for me, would be to remove 4 pleats from this side, 2 pleats from this side, reducing the total number of pleats to 29, and that means that the apron at the waist will be 17 and 17 and a half at the back, which is a 50-50 split, which is best possible practice, quite frankly. Because the other option would be to unpick all of these pleats and press them flat and sew it up again. And I don't want to do that because this is beautiful for a couple of reasons. One of them is this is beautiful workmanship. But another reason that I don't want to do it, when I turn it over, I mean, we have the usual just red ruin in here, right? A poorly poorly done, inadequate canvas. It's in separate pieces. It's absolutely not doing the job that it should be doing. Nobody does canvas right, it seems. But the red flag, the major red flag I get, looking inside, when I see a kilt that has irregular, when the pleating's irregular on the outside, it's well, you can spot it across the room, but when I also see that these pleats are irregular across the inside. And so immediately I just sort of groaned when I saw that, because properly, I then have to take time to find out why they're doing that. Because properly, when a kilt's pleated the pleat should be equal width across the back, plus or minus some minor variations, because the set isn't always, distances aren't always, measurement isn't always equal between key points. So here to here is the same as from there to there, but it isn't always so, right? So when I see, I'm not going to call them flaws, differences like that, I had to stop and figure out why. Because once I see something like that, because of the backspin cutout, I can't correct this. So what I find, so we got one pleat here, a pleat here that's, one's almost stacked on top of the other, and another one, I think there's at least one more over here, where they're just right on top of the other. And so I wanted to see why that's so. And unfortunately, I found out why. When we're doing a pleat, when we're pleating to the set, let's say that pleat's there, the next pleat is going to be there, and the next pleat is going to be there. You can see that progression across the turn. But what we see here with this first pleat, the first pleat is to the left of the red stripe, but the next pleat is a little, well, the next pleat is, they've pleated it in the wrong direction. So if the first pleat, that's the apron, first pleat's there, the second pleat should be, let's say, here, but it's not, it's back here. And this one should be here, but it's back here. So so they've done this, and they've achieved a beautiful effect on the outside, but I think as they were sewing, they reached this critical point where they'd sort of painted themselves into a corner, that they were stuck because of the sort of arbitrary way they'd been marking where they're going to fold. They didn't plan ahead. They just looked for an element of a tartan, folded it over and sewn it. And this isn't a ringing condemnation, because the workmanship is so very well done. The sewing is beautiful, that I have to consider that this is someone who's a superior tailor, who's looked at, maybe had it explained to, but hasn't been properly taught how to lay out the pleats. And frankly, this is better than my first effort. or 10th effort pleating to the set, to be honest. So I can't in good faith sneer at them, but this isn't a problem. This isn't a characteristic that I can correct, because the back's thinned out. I can't reassign where the pleats are, right? So this has to stay. But that also means I really, really, really don't want to pull it apart and press it flat and then do it up again, because I'm not confident that I'm going to be able to follow their thought processes. And I'm a little reluctant to do so because I'm afraid that this sort of incompetence is contagious. That's kind of an atavistic, silly fear, but I don't want to go too deeply into their mind, right? The other factor too is that it's been spliced from 2 short lengths of cloth, which isn't bad practice. It's nicely hidden, which is good practice, but this is not my ideal of a beautiful seam. So what I would like to do, I'm not going to resew this, but I would like to do is I want to sew this scalloped edge down with silk thread, because it's loose like that. It can ball up and create a lump and be visible. So, pardon me. So there's a number of things that I don't like, but I can't correct. But the net effect isn't, it's not the end of the earth, because we do have a beautiful outside surface, and it's beautifully done. So what I want to do, rob those pleats that I mentioned, reduce it to 31 pleats, which will give us a larger apron with a deeper apron pleat, which is better practice. I want to do a proper canvassing job, because frankly, I'm simply not going to put my name or have my name associated with a kilt. I'm not going to let this. I'm not going to let this out of my shop without it properly done, if I'm going to do anything. So proper canvas. Probably can't replace the lining, although I could give it my best shot, and then give it a clean and press. So I don't know the history of this thing, but from what I see, again, I believe that this is a very competent tailor, very good sewing skills. It's a valiant first effort, but at the same time, when it leaves my shop, it's going to be a better kilt than the one that arrived. Thank you.